If there's a player on this White Sox team that is more likely to get traded besides Dylan Cease, and I'm talking about value you get back and the player who the White Sox might want to trade away, who would that player be this offseason?
In terms of the names that people would most care about, I think you would be looking at Eloy Jimenez, who's already been speculated to maybe be of interest to some teams, as well as Yoan Moncada. Now, obviously, we talked about the hurdles that exist in trading both of those guys. Eloy Jimenez, in the fact that he's a power hitter that didn't show a lot of power toward the end of last season, is he a guy that is going to get the kind of return package you want after some of those struggles a year ago? Yoan Moncada obviously has the same issue in that he struggled to hit for the better part of the last few years. And on top of that, he makes a whole lot of money, $24 million coming his way in 2024. So the matchmaking might not be super easy for Chris Getz on that front. But if we're talking about someone who isn't Dylan Cease, we've already talked about the enormous return that it's going to take to pry Luis Robert Jr. away from the White Sox. Eloy and Yoan are those guys. But I think that there are players throughout the roster that might fetch you something here, something there. And we saw that with Aaron Bummer. You know, obviously he had a contract, that made him desirable by another team. I don't know how many of those guys remain on the White Sox roster, but outside of some of those named players, it would make sense if you saw maybe some ancillary pieces get moved for something else just to, perhaps position the White Sox better from a depth standpoint.
Yeah, and I think, it's just so hard, and I wanted to trade him last year when he had a great 2022 at the second half. But Eloy Jimenez, if he was anywhere near where his potential was, the White Sox would be holding on to him just like they're holding on to Luis Robert.
Right, and I think, too, that even if they do have their eyes on trading him, which they haven't said that they have their eyes on trading anybody, they'll just listen to whatever comes their way, maybe they're better off keeping him and saying, let's see if he can hit 15, 20 home runs before the trade deadline next year, and all of a sudden his value is way higher than it is right now. I mean, the whole idea of selling low, especially on guys that you've already invested in, is a tricky one to swallow. And so I think Chris Getz will get offers on those guys this year. But as we've mentioned, there's some hurdles to getting rid of them and some reasons that you wouldn't want to get rid of them right now.
And if you follow the old adage of 27 through 31 are your prime years, he just entered his prime. He turned 27, I think, on the 27th. So he's a young whippersnapper coming into
3 days ago?
3 days ago.
Happy belated, Eloy.
Good job, Eloy, for 2027. You've done a good job. That's that and the potential are the things that you're like, man, if we hold on to this dude and he becomes the guy, like we were talking yesterday to Dan Hayes from the Twins, who from The Athletic, who covers the Twins, and talking about Royce Lewis, how he had so many injuries before he finally came up in 2023 and became the player that they always had seen and thought that he was to be. This is the only trepidation I feel about trading away Eloy, because he has years to go. I don't think he's free agent until 2027. And so I feel like once you trade him away, some other team gets him, and not necessarily they're doing anything right with him or anything like that, just naturally figures it out. This time of the year, he was just going to be good. And if you kept him in the White Sox, he was going to be good. If he goes to another team, he might be good. So that's the problem with the Eloy Jimenez, but also the constant injuries. And this year, he had injuries, but he played through them, and he only hit 18 home runs. That's the thing that you fight with yourself when you're thinking about Eloy. Like I used with the Dylan Cease, he's more of the enigma where you're like, the talent is through the roof, but also availability is the best ability, and he hasn't been available for the majority of his career, and I can't have that and a team that, it's not going to be competing next year, but you rather get and jump off that ship a year earlier than a year late.
Well, I'll bring this up again. You brought it up in regards to Cease earlier in the show. There's no rule that says Chris Getz has to trade all these guys this winter. And there is a universe, granted, you shouldn't expect that it's going to happen because it hasn't happened yet, but there is a world in which the White Sox don't get the the return offer that they want for Eloy Jimenez. They don't get the return offer they want for Yoan Moncada. Both these guys are on the team next year, and while White Sox fans, given what has happened to this point, might be counting down to the day their team's able to get rid of those guys, what if those guys just are suddenly good? And again, it's just one possibility of many.
That's going to hurt.
Then all of a sudden, Chris Getz's plan can either be more easily executed or might change for the better. Who knows? Maybe Eloy Jimenez plays his way into a long-term plan. Yoan Moncada, who everybody is assuming just because of that price tag, is entering his final year with the White Sox. Maybe he's so good that it's worth picking up that contract option for 2025. Again, these are hypotheticals. I'm not saying you should expect these things to happen. They haven't happened yet. But these guys were invested in the first place for a reason. You'd like to think that talent, that ability is certainly still there. What if it happens? What if the cookie crumbles in a way where it happens and these guys are finally hitting for the White Sox at the beginning of next season?
We all silly like